Welcome, friends. Welcome, family. What's going on, you guys? It's a Friday here on the watch list. Still the morning here. I got in before you guys really got going on your day, hopefully. Good to see everyone is showing up. Of course, it has been the wrapping up of the Democratic National Convention up in Chicago. It ended last night. Of course, it also went late as well as it did for the rest of the week as they were off in the Eastern time zone. So, of course, folks on the East Coast dealing with that. But Vice President Harris had her speech. There was more Republicans that spoke also on Thursday evening. Adam Kinzinger, former Republican Congress member. A couple other Republicans that also spoke about the importance of not leaving their principles or their thoughts about conservatism and what the Republican Party used to talk about, but also just ridding themselves of Donald Trump. It was one of the themes of the night. Children were everywhere. Her nieces or great nieces were there to help figure how to let Republicans how to pronounce her name. Her goddaughter, I think her niece, and also her goddaughter, niece, and another. And her stepdaughter were also there. They spoke. So all kinds of folks showed up. They made the night all, I think, a little bit more energetic and more happiness based off of what I saw from the day before when they were talking about many of the issues that come from what the party's trying to fix. But there was things that people were looking for in Kamala Harris's speech. And I think some people heard it, other people's heard part of it, and they weren't sure what to make of it. I'm looking for what many of y'all's responses were. We know there's a diversity of opinion within the Democratic Party, especially as we continue to fund this genocide in Gaza, as the IDF continues to murder more innocent Palestinian people. So that was one of the number one things. It's been the conflict that's been going on outside of the DNC for the entire week. There was a breach in a barricade on one of the days, I believe Tuesday. It's been a little bit underreported. Of course, you see it on independent media, you see folks in the streets, but you're not seeing it as CNN talks about the big night, as MSNBC talks about the big night. I saw some of Fox's coverage. I'm not sure if they were talking about the protests, because again, if you talk about the protests, you have to talk about what they're protesting. And in many arenas, I'm sure, in looking for a lack of unity within the party, when you see something like that, you won't say why, because you have to discuss their good point as to reasons why that they're protesting, or at least putting pressure on this potential presidential, well, she's now a nominee, but this potential president to do something differently than what we've been doing. Sometimes those differences have to be seen. Let's go to some of these videos that happened now that I got my first little bit out of the way. I want to go to the beginning of, not the beginning, but the standard part that you may see from a presidential candidate accepting the nomination. This particular part stuck out to me a little bit, mostly because of the long-windedness of it. I don't know. I'm sure they all do it, but sometimes I wish things happened a little bit more rapidly. Here it is, you guys. Here's Kamala Harris's. She accepted to be your president.
And so on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks.
All that. The usual, I'm gonna have to give the usual disclaimer here. Yes, it's a little skippy. I'm working on that. The internet is the best that they offer me in this particular area, which I thought was going to be better than this. So as I run videos, sometimes we have a little bit of a skip and a lag. I'm consistently working on it. I know we've seen it. Let's go ahead and continue.
On behalf of and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another. On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Accept. So your nomination to be president of the United States of America on behalf of so many different people. It's one of those lines. We know we're getting to and this is not particular to Democrats nor Republicans. Everyone does it. There's the long buildup, and I accept your nomination. And you have to make sure you point out the kinds of people that you're looking to represent, who've got you there. Obviously talks about her mother and her family. This came after her, again, these are all normal standard basics of Democratic or convention speeches no matter which party, talk about your family life. JD Vance did it when he was, being the vice presidential running mate. Talked about his grandmother and holding 35 guns in the house and every drawer that she could find. You tell stories about pokiness of your family and then how that connects to who you are today and why you want to serve the people. That's how it began. We all know those aspects. So I'm not going to let her continue talking there. What we will do, though, I'll go on to this next part because this is, I think, what everyone was looking for. It's what my ears were open for the entire time. I was milling around the house as she was speaking, as long as I could still hear what was happening. But this was the moment that I'm not sure how much it helped, hurt, or left it where it was already. As I mentioned, the diversity of thought within the party is there's a significant percentage of the Democratic voters who are kind of over this genocide. So she had to address it, especially since there was issues before about the way that she took some of these protesters. Let's go. What you guys think?
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
Sorry, guys.
And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7th, including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Well, there's that aspect, and that's honest. I was kind of expecting from it. I'm not sure how many folks were surprised by it. Of course, she starts, we need the ceasefire, and that's like a general statement to say we want it to end, period. Now, what is next is how do you go about that? Because someone's not going to be happy in the ceasefire, considering there's people that are bombing from mostly one direction. So if they're happy with what they're doing, or they think that it's getting them somewhere, either politically, professionally, monetarily, whatever the motivations may be, there's some folks who don't want to stop. So they're going to be upset if there's a ceasefire. Now, how do you make that happen is who do you side with in a way, as far as who is who's motivated to stop doing or forced to stop doing what they're doing. And that's where she became on the both sides of it. Because look, there's people that are upset about hostages still being kept. There's people obviously upset about the massacres of so many thousands of people that have nothing to do with this beef that has been carried out by Benjamin Netanyahu and his supporters. So if she's playing the both sides of it, which this is the part I was expecting. You talk about the horrors of the hostage situation and the people that were murdered, and then also Palestinians deserve the right to have their own rights and live free. So that's where the applause line came at the end, because some people were still wondering, is this going to be another, Israel has a right to defend itself, which, as we see in political speak, is we're going to continue to let them do whatever the hell they want. Because politically, if I go against them, look what happens to folks in the Democratic Party when they go against, vehemently and directly, goes against the things that they're doing there over in Gaza. Jabal Bowman, done. Cori Bush, done. There was this big concerted effort to run them out of Congress because of the stances they took, the principled stances that they took, and it was probably worth it. That's going to still be talked about and mentioned from now on. The folks who stood their ground about what they believe in and the way things actually should be. Just simply to continue telling the truth. I've always said, for some reason in politics, we like to ignore the obvious truths that are right in front of us because we're worried about how it's going to affect something politically. So we put the political lies and BS and fakeness of politics above what we're looking at right in front of our faces. There's plenty of bigotry, biases that are baked into many of our policies politically. And then we like to act like there's things that they're not ignoring when they do these things. So we can continue to have this policy of arming these folks to murder innocent people and then say, look at the horrors of what's going on. We're looking at it, bro, and we're wondering when you're going to do something differently. Now, when it comes to Kamala Harris, I don't know, maybe she can explain her position of authority in stopping or continuing or going down the same path. That's what people are looking for. What are you going to do if you get now the power that you are looking for as president of the United States? As I go into these next couple of clips, what you'll realize is, I think everyone should realize this, there's this thing called Congress, there's a House, and there's a Senate. Now, I know a lot of times militarily we're funding things and doesn't all just go through Congress, but a lot of it does. I think what they don't speak on enough is there's no absolute power from president, at least until Donald Trump gets his way. So if he ends up in office, he has this supreme authoritative power over all these things. But normally right now, anything you do, there's some checks behind it. There's some authorizations behind it. And so we make these promises as candidates for president, but how much can people really do as candidates? And this goes to economy, this goes to border security, this goes to jobs, all kinds of legislation. The Congress controls so much more of our lives than I think we're giving them credit for, if credit's the right word for it. But Kamala, basically what presidential candidates will say is their wish list. I'll be sure to sign that into law, but you didn't write the bill, and it didn't go through committee hearings, and it didn't go through then the full House and then Senate, and then eventually on your desk, and then survive a filibuster, and all the different ways that it goes through this process. We don't want to get into all that because that's just kind of boring, but that's how these things work. So her both sides of it is very political. You give a little head nod to folks that are supporting Israel and not really knowing or caring what they're doing. And you give a head nod to folks who are like, so when are you going to mention the devastating things that are going on with these innocent people? And she did that too. So everyone is left guessing. So as far as policy wise, because you're going to have to go one way or another, which way you're going to go? That's what we still don't know. That's the fail there. But it's also the whole purpose in saying it the way she said it. You never play your whole hand. This isn't a Kamala Harris thing. This isn't a Donald Trump thing. Politicians never play their full hand because they're going to adapt to whatever they think they should do once they're in power. So I get the disgust, the anger, because it wasn't a vehement, F this fight and this massacre and this genocide happening. Look at all these innocent children literally being maimed and their whole families being taken out in a second. That wasn't going to come. I wasn't expecting it. So maybe that's the downside, and we'll see how much that costs her. I just wonder how many people had issue with that. Even folks that are like diehard, very like energetic and inspired and loved the scene, loved the energy, the happiness, the joy, the calling out of all these horrible policies that Donald Trump wants to implement. Because look, Donald Trump wants to do the same thing. In fact, he won't give a head nod to innocent Palestinian lives. He won't give a head nod to the fact that we're funding this war. And every time you see people get ripped apart, we're a part of that. Okay. Let's jump on one more, because one more of these last two. Which one of these do I like better? We'll go to her quick her quick moments on the economy, because this is some of the things that she's been getting criticism for is, where's the plans? What do you want to do? And this is, again, goes back to what I was talking about with Congress. Let's go here and see what you guys think of this particular moment. Come on now. There it is.
A new way forward. Forward to a future with a strong and growing middle class, because we know a strong middle class has always been critical to America's success. And building that middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. And I'll tell you, this is personal for me. The middle class is where I come from. My mother kept a strict budget. We lived within our means, yet we wanted for little. And she expected us to make the most of the opportunities that were available to us and to be grateful for them. Because as she taught us, opportunity is not available to everyone. That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed. Whether you live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like healthcare and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage and protect Social Security and Medicare. Now compare that to Donald Trump.
Let's compare.
Because I think everyone here knows he doesn't actually fight for the middle class. He doesn't actually fight for the middle class. Instead, he fights for himself and his billionaire friends. And he will give them another round of tax breaks that will add up to $5 trillion to the national debt. And all the while, he intends to enact what in effect is a national sales tax, call it a Trump tax, that would raise prices on middle-class families by almost $4,000 a year. Well, instead of a Trump tax hike, we will pass a middle-class tax cut that will benefit more than 100 million Americans.
Hold on, let me get rid of this. Oh, these are some of the things that she's getting criticism for as far as plans and specifically economic plans, but she gave what she would like to do. Again, and maybe it should be said, but it will take away the luster of the president of the United States, or at least the nominee for the president of the United States, to say, I'd like to get in control of our housing crisis. I'd like to go ahead and take care of Social Security and Medicare, health care in general, prescription drug costs, jobs, pay, equal opportunities, all these things, even things like women's reproductive rights, their health care rights, all things of that nature. But you have to say, like, we will do this. You can't do it by yourself. You just can't. You can't do it by yourself. There needs to be enough members of Congress that are willing to go along with that same agenda and pass those laws that will then be on your desk for you to then proudly sign into law. So these are the goals, these are the aspirations, which are all great and they sound good. But what people, and this isn't a slight on any nominee that says these things, this is the way they go. The hard part is people think, I guess they find it boring to say, and therefore you need to go and vote in this direction if you like this agenda for legislators that are on the same page that I am. Because before, maybe presidents have the power to, lean on folks and make sure they go in their direction in certain avenues and aspects. I feel like that's getting harder and harder with the polarization of the country. When you got so many folks on one side of the aisle versus another, and it becomes your job to then oppose any and everything that another person says so you can progress your career. Because if you don't, you're a rhino or a dino. It's more likely that you're a rhino because that word is tossed around more amongst Republicans than I think dino is. But they need to stay true to their party and only go by the very stringent, narrow-minded things that they're told to be a part of or pass. And if you don't, your ass is probably getting kicked out of Congress too. So there's so many more hurdles. There's so much more red tape, if you would, as far as passing things like this. The middle class tax cut that she was talking about. Donald Trump passed his tax cut. W passed his tax cut for rich folks because he was able to generate enough folks to get that bill together and then go down that route. that bipartisan border bill that many people always talk about. It was put together through Congress. It didn't even make it to Joe Biden, obviously, because Donald Trump told his folks in Congress to not progress it. So that's where the power lies when it comes to changing all these things. So it's I guess it's too boring and wonky or not powerful enough in a speech to say, I need Congress. That's what I need. Because that's the truth. One more thing really fast before I go to, because Donald Trump apparently called into Fox News and was unraveling. That was the most fun part of the night. The backdrop. I always wondered this because I was my first convention was 2008 in Denver when Obama came on the scene. Of course, he was already on the scene, but when he accepted the nomination, there's lighting, there's a look, there's a backdrop from in person and also on camera that they make this look a certain way. And I was comparing the two from the RNC a few weeks ago to now the DNC that just wrapped up. And when Trump came out, there was like, it was like a bunch of light bulbs, like old Vegas flashing. I don't know if they're flashing, but they were on with Trump. Like the name Trump was written across the entire back of the stage as he came out. Like it was, this unveiling of like a concert or something. That was the feel they went for. Ooh, whatever. But it was very much personalized. It's just this guy. Of course, in response to that, I feel like at the DNC, they were looking for, they tossed the American flags on both ends. It's pretty standard. But the idea to go for a gold backdrop, it's almost like a golden moment. They want to make it look sparkling differently than another. But there was no Kamala lights flashing because the theme here was, I'm working for you. She talked about her background and the reason I got into prosecution and the reason I got into law in the first place was to look out for other people. She had a childhood friend that was being assaulted by her stepfather, and that was one of her motivations for getting into politics, or at least into law. So you can't come with a big Kamala sign behind her, but it made me wonder then, those two looks, did one actually appeal to people's internal subconscious thought more than another? I think it worked to their degree to a point. I'm gonna skip the last one where she was talking about more plans of hers, because again, it's pretty much a similar issue. Is you need some help, kid. Okay, let's go to Donald Trump. I only have 3 videos on him. I know I've been talking for a while, you guys, but Donald Trump went on Fox directly right in response to this speech. So obviously he was listening, and he was trying to dispute a few things. Donald Trump spiraling is always fun. Okay, let's go.
20 people have poured into our country, many of them from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylum, and record number of terrorists. And other countries are releasing their prisoners from their jails. They're emptying out their jails into the United States of America because of her incompetence and her bad border policies. She is a horrible, horrible person to run this country. We won't have a country if she gets elected. 20 million people have poured into our country, of them from...
He started over again. Lines that he's been pushing on every interview he does, every campaign, rally, and stop he has. They're sending criminals. They're unleashing people from insane asylums. They give them all directions to your home in Omaha and your home in Miami. Oh, and your home also, they're coming for you. They're going to El Paso. So I don't know the degree to which people actually believe this directly or to a point of reality, but it doesn't make any sense. It's fear-mongering, but that's what politicians always do, specifically and most lately Republicans. There's all of this fear-mongering to scare you into voting a certain way, not voting for something, but voting against something out of your fear or your anger or your prejudices. Let's keep it real. And so he's trying to appeal to all those things all at the same time. And his main theme since 2015, when his ass rolled down that escalator, was, I hate migrants. I hate them. They're dirty. They're savages. They're rapists and they're drug dealers and they're killers. It's the same thing for 2024. You got to switch up the message a little bit, or maybe you don't, because he still apparently is running the Republican Party, so it's worked out for him well this far. But he's the same lines. They're releasing their insane asylum prisoners, and they're sending them to your homes. Okay, because that's some policy from a specific country. He hasn't named which country. He said they. All right, so that's one of his meltdown moments. Still on Fox, still going crazy. Hold on. Here's here's the strategy on his momentum. And honestly, president's current
Let me
momentum.
ask you this: appeal and momentum for women voters. She's trying to pull the youth vote, the Hispanic vote, the Black vote back in her direction. Polls show that she's having some success in that at this point. So what are you going to do? What's your strategy to rebuild the momentum that you had with those voters?
No, she's not having success. I'm having success. I'm doing great with the Hispanic voters. I'm doing great with Black men. I'm doing great with women because women want safety. They want safety. And they don't have safety when they have somebody allowing 20 million people into our country, many of them very dangerous people. No, it's only in your eyes that they have that, Martha. We're doing very well in the polls. We're leading in most of the polls.
Sure.
And in the swing states, we're leading in almost every one of them.
Mr. President,
Michigan,
let me interrupt.
the auto workers are voting for me because you're not going to have an auto industry if she gets elected.
Mr.
They're going
President,
to all electric cars. All electric cars are going to be made in China. And you're not going to have, you literally will not have an auto industry. The United Auto Workers ought to be ashamed of themselves. They sold the workers down the tubes.
Too quick.
And that's Trump's approach to whether or not the momentum is bothering him. I guess he answered the question because it's apparently bothering him. But his answer was actually, no, she doesn't have momentum. I have momentum. Hispanics like me, black men are still voting for me. Okay, I mean, sure, yes, I'm sure there's Latinos voting for you. I'm sure there's Black men voting for you. I'm sure there's Black women voting for you. That's generally how the country works. There's a lot of people and a lot of people vote. But the whole idea of, I just don't believe it, that's just in your head, Martha. Bro, you can actually address the issue. And maybe you might convince some people to come your way if you're not denying the reality. You can point out that she's got momentum going, and this is how you change it, unless you don't have any plan of how to change it, outside of just continuing to lie, continuing to say that the polls are just great. We know that the polls aren't that great in your favor anymore. We know that already, because now you're calling them fake. When you were whooping Joe Biden's ass, you weren't calling them fake. You just weren't. So we see the differences. Anybody that's paid attention for longer than five and a half seconds is paying attention to his comfort level, especially in choosing someone like JD Vance as his running mate to galvanize that base of hatred and bigotry, to then having to switch up and not really knowing which way to go. Isn't it telling, though, that he points out all the people that are still voting for him? I've got the Hispanic vote. I've got the Black. He doesn't have the Black woman's vote, and generally women's votes in general, as he's continued to alienate himself from them. But they want safety and security. That's why I have the women's vote. Forget the fact that I'm attacking them every day. Forget the fact that my running mate absolutely hates women. Forget all that. We have the women's vote. This has been the approach. Rather than appealing to voters, they tell voters what they should think. This is what you should think. The United Auto Workers, those folks in that union should be so upset. Should they? Maybe you should ask them if they're upset. And I'm sure some people are. And then when they tell you why they're upset, you propose a plan that may not make them so upset anymore. Then they'll go, oh, that's my guy. Instead, it's a lazy process. It's, yo, you guys don't agree with me. You should be ashamed of yourself. Anybody that's Jewish in this country that votes for a Democrat should be ashamed of themselves. You're traitor to your own people. He says stuff like that. Is that convincing? Is that convincing? Is that going to make someone go, yeah, I didn't like this guy before, but now that he told me I should be ashamed of myself and the approach that I'm taking in my voting process, now I'm going to go his way. I think he actually thinks that works. I think he does. It's their approach consistently. Ignore the problem and just say it's not there, and you're actually going to vote for me instead. Okay. I see what you're saying, Zen Master, Sports and Shorts. Apparently, I need to reach out to you to get my PC together. It's, they're Macs, but maybe we should call Cox Communications and let them know how to change that. Okay, one more to go. This is if you guys couldn't tell, Martha McCollum and Brett Baer there on Fox in the arena at the DNC were talking to Donald Trump, who called in. And they had to go to Greg Gutfeld, a live Greg Gutfeld show, which I watched the beginning of because I actually saw this happening when it was going down. A live Greg Gutfeld came on later, and they really had to hit that point. But Donald Trump, he don't care about that. Donald Trump wants to rant and rave. So this was just funny to end. They're really trying to get his ass off of the air. as if he's talking about voting machines or something. Let's go.
Beat Biden in a Democrat primary. I
Right.
have no doubt about it. And they made it absolutely impossible for him. They made it that you have to
Yeah.
get 60, 70% of the vote just to get in. And you know
Mr.
what?
President,
In the end, the Democrats did the same thing to Joe Biden. They threw Joe Biden out of the
Yeah.
party.
And that's
They
why
did
we
the
saw a
same
different
thing
night
as they did to
tonight.
RFK.
Mr. President,
President,
Yeah,
thank
Mr.
you
President,
very
go.
much
sir.
for the time. We
Okay, thank you
appreciate
very
that
much.
live feedback.
Stay right there.
Thank you.
Live edition of Gutfeld is coming up. Thank you so much
That's
for joining
exciting.
us from Chicago. It's been a great week.
Good night.
Beating Joe Biden.
Is he talking again? And apparently I saw a couple clips of it. He went straight to Newsmax and continued his raging anger at this speech. We'll see. We'll see if it works. I mean, it's supposed to be, counter programming. Every time a Democrat says something, you have to make sure you give the torch to it. It makes sense. It's just maybe you should have thought it through a little bit more, because I'm sure there's plenty of arenas you could attack folks on. Every politician has their weaknesses, but he can't find it. He can't find it. I didn't mute myself. Of course, I'm still here. He can't find it. He's looking for it, and they had to get to Gutfeld next. Anytime you have one that's talking so much, and you can't get them off the air, and you're in an interview with them, you just look for a little cues that they may pick up on to shut the hell up so they can move on. He's like, and that's the way it's been. You're right, Mr. Former President. That's why tonight is, you have to say something to interject that may make them think you're trying to talk back to them. And in reality, you're saying, that's a good point. Now let's get the hell out of here. You guys might be saying that now that we've gone a good 32 minutes here. Appreciate you guys. The DNC is done. Now we've got 70 some odd days left before the election, which we saw from many speeches. We're talking about how that's going to fly by. We still got October surprises to come. We'll see how that shakes out as each campaign is preparing for the finale in the race to the end. We'll see if the DNC has propelled them enough. It was celebrity packed, athlete packed. DL Hughley spoke. Brought out all the stars that they could. Even that big surprise that was supposed to be either Beyonce or Taylor Swift that people were thinking about, nobody showed up. They just used Beyonce music, and that worked out for them. But we've got a couple months left to go, a few months left to go, and we'll see where this whole thing shakes out. Up next is back to campaign trails, interviews. We're going to see more details from Harris's and Walz's campaign. Maybe it'll work out for them. We will see. Glad to see you guys also here as well. As things continue to happen, we'll make it happen. Sarah, Layla, I do see your work here. Thank you so much for pointing out. You guys subscribe, share the stream. I do these lives every once in a while because I like to see you guys. I like to see in real time how you guys are thinking. Of course, every day we still do breakdown videos of things that are going on politically. Please check it out as well. You guys are already here. It's Watchlist TYT. Tell your folks about it as well too. I think we're doing some good things. We just hit a 1 million view hitter that just happened a day ago. So don't sleep on the watch list. We're still doing big things over here. Tell your people what's going on. If you haven't seen it, you're not one of the 1.1 million that hasn't. So go back, check it out. I did it just a day ago. We'll catch you guys later. Appreciate you guys being ahead, and whichever way you're voting, just vote. That's really the main thing that I think conservatives don't want anyone to do. Go vote. Vote for what you think will progress the country forward. We'll see you guys later. Have a good time.